All right.
Why don't you go grab it?
All right.
I thought I might have it.
No worries, I can grab it all. Thank you so much.
All right.
Hey.
Oh. Okay. Welcome. As I look around the room, I see all the usual suspects. I appreciate you guys taking some time on this Wednesday. It's a bit irregular for us. We usually do these on Tuesdays, but we had the opportunity to bring Arizona Superintendent of Public Instruction Tom Horne to visit with the group, and so his schedule demanded we do it on Wednesday, and so here we are on a Wednesday because that's a tremendous opportunity for us. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Sean Ricker. I am the superintendent of the Pima Unified School District in rural Graham County, Arizona. I'm also the president of the Arizona Rural Schools Association, which is my honor for this year. Well, this is my second year, so this is the last year. After me, then we'll let somebody else take on that role. But we're also joined by Diane Smith, our policy consultant expert, who will also help to contribute to this. And I see we have one of our rural liaisons from the department. Henry Dunkerson has also joined us. So we're glad to have him with us, and we really appreciate all the wonderful things that he's doing in Graham and Greenlee County, especially, but also I know supporting efforts throughout the state. I don't know if it would be helpful for Superintendent Horne to kind of go around and just do a quick introduction so he knows who all's in the room. If that works, and I'll just kind of call people out as I see them here on the list. But Shanna Johnson, you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Shanna Johnson. I'm the superintendent of Mohawk Valley Elementary School District in East Yuma County.
Thank you, Shanna.
Uh-huh.
Jennifer Murrieta.
Good morning. I'm Jennifer Murrieta, and I am the superintendent in Stanfield.
Awesome. Welcome. Marty Bassett.
Hi, Marty Bassett, Superintendent Mary C. O'Brien Accommodation District.
Awesome. Thank you. Steve Estatico.
Hi, I'm Steve Estatico. I'm the superintendent for the Superior Unified School District in Superior, Arizona, in Pinal County. I also serve on the ARSA Executive Board.
Thank you, Steve. Carolyn Stewart.
Carolyn Stewart, Superintendent, Bullhead City School District in Mojave County.
Thank you. Eric Francis.
Good morning. I'm Eric Francis. I'm an author, educator, and a supporter of schools, a number of them in the rural county areas of Arizona. Just looking forward to hearing what the initiatives are going to be.
All right. I've got an iPhone. I'm not sure who that is. Okay. Well, I know sometimes when you're on an iPhone, it's almost impossible to unmute yourself. So we'll move past. Jay Johnson, want to introduce yourself?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jay Johnson. I'm president-elect for the Arizona Council for Exceptional Children.
All right. Kelly Burns.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Kelly Burns at the Yavapai Accommodation School District and part of the ARSA board as well.
Thank you. Wayne Fagan.
Sorry. Good morning. My name is Wayne Fagan. I'm chair of D. Howard International Education Foundation that has as its main program Rural STEM Initiative, and delighted to be with you and just listen to things from your perspective. So thank you for the opportunity.
I like your background.
That's a real deal. That's not a Photoshop. My background is in aviation, and that was a company I was general counsel of.
Awesome. Thank you, Wayne. Kevin Davis
Kevin Davis, Superintendent at Wilcox Unified School District.
and Stephanie Miller.
Good morning, everybody. Stephanie Miller with Congress Elementary School District Superintendent, and also I sit on the ARSA Executive Board, and it's great to have you here, Superintendent Horne.
Thank you.
Good.
You know, the arts are one of my big passions.
Well, and Henry, I mentioned you're here. You can introduce yourself though.
Good morning, Henry Dunkerson. I'm the Graham County Program Specialist with the Department of Ed. So I'm placed in Graham County, but I also work with Greenlee County.
All right. Did I miss anybody? All right. Well, as everyone knows, Tom Horne is the elected superintendent of public instruction. He is, one of the few elected, statewide offices that deals with education. Well, he's one of the few Republicans actually in a statewide office right now in Arizona as well. He, as some of you undoubtedly remember, he was superintendent of public instruction in the past, and then stepped away and did a bunch of other things, and then recognized that there was a need, and he had, the desire and the capacity to step in and fill that need, and so he ran again back in 2022, and now is halfway through this term, and has already indicated that he is interested and willing to provide a second term of service as well in this capacity. And so he's very committed. I've had the opportunity to cross paths numerous times with Superintendent Horne on a number of different issues, and have always found him to be very thoughtful, very intelligent, highly engaged in the needs of our schools. And I'm very glad to have the opportunity to visit with him today and to include all of you in that discussion. This is a roundtable, so we'll kind of give him the floor and allow him to kind of share his thoughts. But I hope as he's speaking, you'll think of things that you might want to ask him about. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Superintendent Horne.
Thank you, Sean. I appreciate that very much. Sitting next to me is Kat Barrett. She's an associate superintendent. Each associate superintendent has a number of sections under their jurisdiction. One of Kat's is our initiative to help counties, rural counties, as much as possible. So that's why I have her with me, because that's part of her job, is dealing with our counties, including our rural counties, in terms of what can we do to help. She also has other responsibilities such as Title I, adult education, and I think 21st century. So there may be some specific areas that she knows more than I do with respect to the counties. As Sean mentioned, I was superintendent from 2003 to 2011. Then I was elected state attorney general. Then I went back to the private practice of law for a while. And Sean is right. I saw a big need to come back as state superintendent. My friends all came to me and said, "Tom, you're crazy. Much lower income than you get as a lawyer, and you were attorney general, you're going backwards." And I said, "No, the big problem's in our schools, and that's what I absolutely have to work on." And when I say the big problems, is I think it's the focus on academics. In some areas, the focus on academics was lost, and we can see it in the students' performances, and that's really my passion. We adopt, before I took office, after I was elected, I got an email from a consultant who specialized in failing schools, and he said that the Arizona schools have not had any help from the Department of Education in many years. They just sit in judgment, and that's the opposite of my philosophy. I think we have to do some auditing. That's part of our job, but I think our main job is what we can do to help improve academics. So we adopted a mission statement The very first part of which says the Department of Education is a service organization. That's a very first part of our mission statement, dedicated to raising academic outcomes and empower parents. So I think that tells you a lot about our focus. We really, anytime any of you need help with something, please contact us. That's, in my opinion, primarily what we're there for. The media like to write about controversies, and I understand that. It makes more interesting reading, but 90% of my efforts and those of the department are dedicated to helping our schools do better academically. So that tells you what we're all about. I think Sean asked me to comment on an issue that just came up at the state board meeting, which is absenteeism. Absenteeism is way up. It was in the number of students that were considered chronically absent, which is defined as more than 18 absences, I think, in a year. Before the pandemic, it was 9%. Now it's almost a third. And as you guys know even better than I do, you cannot educate students that are not there. And I think part of the problem is the pandemic got people used to the idea of being home. But I think part of the problem is that the solutions have been too soft, talking to parents and that sort of thing. I think that parents are the key to students coming to school, and we need to increase their motive to be sure their kids come to school every day. If they have too many absences, they'll be lost in subsequent grades and end up on welfare, unemployed. We just can't have that. So the proposal that I made is we go back to what the schools used to do. All change isn't necessarily for the better, and I think it was a bad thing that we lost what we used to do, which was for most schools 9 absences per semester, which would be 18 a year. The student flunked, unless they had an appeal if they had a special reason. But normally that was the rule, and 5 tardies was an absence. And parents, most parents are conscientious and they want their kids to go to school every day and learn, but not all parents are conscientious. And so for those who aren't, I think even they want the students to pass their courses and certainly to graduate on time. So if they know that kids being absent too much is going to jeopardize that they'll flunk the course, they may not graduate on time, I think that would be the most effective thing in improving the situation. Now, in the absence of legislation, this is a local control issue. So I can't dictate that, but I can suggest it. I just spoke yesterday to the charter school people, and I mentioned it to them, and they said, well, the only problem is that if we do that, the kids will go to another charter school that doesn't. And so there's thoughts about introducing legislation to make it uniform. But for the moment, it's just a suggestion on my part. It's the implementation would be up to you. But I must say that we must do something about absenteeism. We can't teach kids who aren't there. We have 15 initiatives to help schools improve their academics. I think you all have copies of that. I'm happy to answer any questions about it. I think it would be too boring if I went over all 15. But if anybody has questions about that, I'm happy to answer them. The only one that I will mention, I'm going to mention 2 that I think are the most important in getting results in the students' proficiency rates. The first one is essential standards. When I was during my first 8 years, from 2003 to 2011, we had what are called essential standards. Those were, we hope teachers will teach all the standards, but you can't teach all standards to mastery. So those were the standards that we suggested they teach to mastery, because that would predominate in the end of year test. Since I left, that was, I think, foolishly dropped. So now it's pure guesswork. You have no idea what the students are going to be tested on. And so you teach the standards that you think are important, but if those aren't the standards that are on the test, students will be tested on concepts that they don't know. It doesn't make sense. I think it's barbarous to test students on matters that they weren't taught. They have to be taught the concepts. So the test will test the specifics, applications, but the concepts have to have been taught. So we're reinstituting essential standards. Those will be out before the end of February, was the commitment to me from that division. And that'll give you plenty, they'll be effective for the test given in April of 2026. So it'll give everybody a lot of time to adjust to those. The second priority is something called Conmigo, which is application of artificial intelligence to education. We did a lot of research on that, and we found that Conmigo, many of you I think are familiar with Khan Academy, and we have, I think, thousands of Khan Academy videos on our website with master teachers teaching different subjects that teachers can use to see how it's done or even use it in their classroom. Well, Khan has also gotten involved in artificial intelligence. He was involved from the very beginning of ChatGPT, so he's very knowledgeable about it. And our research showed that Conmigo was the most effective application of artificial intelligence to the classroom. Now, this is no substitute for teachers. There is no substitute for in-person learning between teachers and students, but it helps the teachers. It provides the equivalent of 2 assistants so they can focus on the creative teaching. But more important, it provides the student with a tutor 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. So what happens now is teacher gives a test. Some students get a 90%, others get a 70%. Those who got 70% are still going to go on to the next grade, and they're not going to know 30% of what they need for continued learning. So some of them get lost. With Conmigo, the teacher can go sit with the student and said, based on the test, these are the areas that I taught that you didn't get. Please go on Conmigo and get the tutoring. And then we have the chance of 100% of the students knowing 90% of what they need to go on to the next grade. It can make a tremendous difference. So the cost is $15 per student per year, although the initial $15 per student would go for a 2-year period. I think it's less than the cost of a textbook. Research shows that the most effective way of teaching is individual tutoring. We demonstrated that when we spent $40 million on tutoring. We had 22% of our kids make a half year's progress in 1 6-week session. But the research shows it as well. And but we can't afford 1,200,000 tutors for 1,200,000 kids. So this provides it, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year for $15 per student. I think that's very well worth it for much better academic results. And I urge all of you, if you have not signed up, please do. You can see on our website, how to do that. So those are the 2. I've probably gone on too long. I'll just say those are the 2 highest priorities that I have going. I'm delighted to answer any questions you have, and thank you for the opportunity.
Well, thank you very much. And yes, I hope that everybody's had the opportunity to review the list of 15 initiatives, but I appreciate you highlighting those 2, as well as introducing the concerns about chronic absenteeism. I think one of the issues that that's always top of mind for me and has been for a long time is this teacher shortage that we're facing, especially in rural Arizona. You know, the fact that, you know, increasingly we're having to hire teachers that are aspirational teachers as opposed to certified teachers. You know, people are figuring out if they want to be a teacher while leading a classroom of, you know, 20 to 30 kids, you know, which obviously is putting the education of those children at risk. But the market forces that are driving that are very real. And so I wasn't sure if that was something that you could speak to. I mean, are there
Sure. Yeah,
what are the
yeah.
efforts that are going on in the department right now
There
around
there are
that?
there are two things we need to do, because when teachers leave the profession, we survey them. So the number one reason is obvious, it's salaries. We absolutely must pay our teachers more. I've been an advocate of higher salaries for teachers, I don't know, all my adult life. When I was, I served 24 years on the school board for the third largest district in the state. And we always aspired to be pay our teachers more than any other district. We cut our office staff in half. We devoted every penny we could to teacher salaries. We always ended up second because there was a Native American district that we couldn't compete with because of all the federal money they got. But other than that, we were second in our teacher salaries. Every year I go to the legislature to advocate for higher salaries, and haven't had success so far, but I'm determined to stay at it. I think that's the number one thing. The number two thing that teachers give is failure, and this is particularly applicable to those of you who are administrators, failure of administrators to support them on matters of discipline. Students need boundaries. They want boundaries, but if one student gets away with things, the others copy them, and the class can become chaotic, and you know, the kids can't learn, the teachers can't teach, and the teachers, some of them leave the profession. I would leave the profession if I was subjected to those conditions. So I hope that everybody here who's an administrator support your teachers in discipline. In my district, I served, as I mentioned, for 24 years. We never reversed a teacher on a matter of discipline one time in 24 years, not one time. Our learning went up, our test scores went up. We were known as the toughest district around, but it paid off in more learning. So that's I think the second most important thing in retaining teachers.
And I agree 100%. I think, you know, we do see, I mean, I think everybody that's worked in a school has definitely seen that kids are getting harder to manage, as you know, especially when they get into that middle school and high school age range where social media, you know, we've seen, you know, how many different little incidents around TikToks that, you know, encouraged, you know, students to misbehave at school. You know, and parental support is definitely, you know, another part of the puzzle. Of course, we're all playing the same, you know, chase the money game that the charter schools are referencing when you ask them, you know, why they wouldn't be more, we want to put policies in place that were harsher on chronic absenteeism. You know, if you do something and then people feel like, well, that's, you know, that's unfair, or that's overly harsh, you know, now market forces are gonna, you know, affect your bottom line. But I think the other thing that we see factoring into that a lot, on a statewide basis, you know, what I hear from conversations with superintendents in the state associations, and I don't know that it happens as much in the rural places, but is that school boards a lot of times are really pressuring administrators to be more lenient about student misbehavior, that there's a cultural thing there that really does get in the way of teachers feeling supported. But I'm curious to see what other comments on those, you know, concerns.
I just want to say that you're right about the school boards. We're about to start training for people running for school boards or who are on school boards who would like to have the training. And that's one of our points that we're trying to teach school board members. You've got to support. This is what I did. You've got to support your teachers on discipline.
Excellent. Any other thoughts from the group on the teacher shortage or support for teachers and teacher pay and those kinds of issues?
You should have an icon that's a hand that is the equivalent of raising your hand in class, so you can.
Yep. Exactly. Okay, so I'm gonna take us to the next topic, kind of going off of what you just offered there. And maybe this is something that Kat can help us with too, but I know the Department of Education has started, you mentioned the training for school board members that's in the offing, but there's training that's being offered to supervisors of principals, which is in a rural context, generally your superintendents. There's training for principals, there's training for department heads, lead teachers. Very scaffolded, and everybody I've talked to that's participated in any of them has come away better for having participated. I don't know if this would be a great opportunity to kind of introduce some of that to folks.
Yeah, that's number 2 on your list of our initiatives. Associate Superintendent Sid Bailey does the training. And at the end of every session, he asks people to put down if they think this would be helpful to other people. And so far he's got 100%, even though as a result of which we've had a lot of applicants and we've had to greatly increase the number that we were planning to give. But the training's been very popular. He does a great job. He teaches about discipline and academics and all the things that people will need. So yes, I encourage you to, if you haven't had the training, to sign up for it.
Okay. Good. By all means, folks, raise your hand, because I hate it when these things go by for an hour and I've had to talk almost as much as the guest. But but along the lines of, I know Sid Bailey has also been working on developing a new principal evaluation tool, guidelines that the state is working on putting together, again, around trying to help schools develop principals that are able to more effectively support teachers, and a way for their supervisors, whether that's the board or the superintendent or the associate superintendent in a massive district. But that's another effort that's coming out of the department around trying to help make things better. And I've appreciated the opportunity to participate in that. And Melissa's also been on that working group. Melissa Sadorf, our executive director, who couldn't make it today, but yeah, definitely some great things. All right. I'm gonna throw it out there because it's something that comes up a lot. So ESA expansion, and this is something that I think is, I don't know, it's been a hot topic for years in Arizona. It's something that affects schools, and especially, it's interesting to me. I went through the last quarterly report that came out on ESA participation and looked at rural districts compared to metropolitan districts, and found that really across the board, that 7% is pretty uniform. That rural districts in the 13 rural counties are really seeing the same levels of ESA participation that we're finding in Maricopa County and Pima County. Where do you see that going? Do you feel it's stabilized, that basically we've identified the people that wanted to participate in that, or do you feel that it'll continue to grow going forward?
Yeah, let me say first that we have 92,000 students in ESAs, and we've got 1,200,000 in public schools. So yeah, at this point, it's not really a threat to the public schools. I think that I give you an example. We have some families with, say, 3 students. 2 of them are doing just fine in their neighborhood school, but even a good school doesn't necessarily meet the needs of all kids. So the third student's needs are not being met, and ESA gives the parents a chance to find a school that will meet that student's needs. And I think reasonable people would think they ought to have that ability to do it. But I'm a public school person. I went to public schools. My 4 kids all went to public schools and did very well. My job is to help the public schools, and that's my primary focus.
Thank you. You know, one of the places where
I just saw a note from somebody, but it disappeared.
oh, Jay, yeah, that was
Sorry, I didn't want to take us away from the conversation, but since we were talking about supporting principals, especially when it comes to behavior, and sometimes understanding special education, we hold a Principals Institute each year, the AZCEC does. It did pass already. I put the link in there, but I also put a link. If you have principals or special ed directors that are interested in what's going on in the state, we encourage them to get on our listserv. So I don't mean to take away from the conversation. I just want to make sure to put them in there. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jay. No, we appreciate that. That's a lot of what we get out of these conversations. You know, one of the places where ESAs have definitely touched on you know, leadership in schools and in rural schools and public schools, you know, is around, you know, the topic, well, what's often labeled the unbundling. And I know, you know, my board has been, you know, having conversations over the last year about, well, you know, how would our school manage providing services to ESA you know, students? You know, we've had parents that take an ESA, they're saying, well, hey, you know, I want my kid to have the opportunity to participate in band. And, you know, that's something that as a homeschool parent, I can't do. Can I buy just a band class from my district? Can I buy, you know, CTE classes are another one that's really kind of a hot topic issue. And it seems like there's really been kind of a, you know, some districts are kind of going down the path of saying, absolutely not. We're here for those students that are, you know, full ADM students, and that's the only students that we serve. And other districts are kind of taking that other path and saying, well, you know what, we're here to provide for the educational needs of children. And if a parent says that they feel like the only educational need that they need us to serve is, you know, around one little aspect, then that's a direction. And I wasn't sure if that was falling into your, you know, set of issues or something that you were.
Yeah, it's a issue for the local school boards. I would fall into the latter category. I think that if students can, you know, they may be able to benefit your sports team, for example, or if the band can use some more instrumentalists, it's a good idea. So I would think it's a good idea to, and you can charge for it, obviously. So I think it's a good idea to include those kids. But it's up, you know, it's up to the districts.
Right. So local control again. Right.
Right.
Right. Okay. What other questions?
I'm surprised.
Stephanie's got her hand up.
Oh, you got a hand up. Great. I was going to say, I was surprised people are being so shy. Go ahead, Stephanie.
I was wondering about the school safety grants, and I just saw that ours it's going to be the last is this next 25-26 fiscal year. And I was wondering if there was a possibility of getting those extended.
We're certainly lobbying for that at the legislature. Yeah, it's very important. That's one of my big issues is having police officers there to protect kids and staff. I've increased the number of police officers in schools since I took office 2 years ago from 190 to 565. So it's been a big push. Everybody who asked for a police officer got one. I hope when we start the new cycle, more schools will ask for them. Some people who haven't asked for them say, we want to have gun-free schools. Well, saying you want to have a gun-free school is saying, I'm an easy victim, come get me. There's no protection here. There are no massacres at police stations. So I've been pushing very hard and asking schools to consider it when the next round comes. Please ask, if you don't have a police officer now, please ask for one, because we just had an incident in Tucson, a charter school. They got a police officer 2 weeks. I'm sorry. Thank you. We just had an incident in the Tucson area where somebody came to kill. He was in a room where he would have killed 10 kids and some adults. The police officer had only been there for 2 weeks. We were really lucky. By the skin of our teeth, we avoided a major catastrophe. And I tell people that if you get some maniac invades a school, as this happened, just happened in Tucson, but it's happened in other states, and could happen, and there's no police officer there, and 10 or 20 kids lose their lives, the parents will never get over that. I know that because I lost a child. And if they find out that school could have had a police officer paid for by the Department of Education and they didn't do it, you can imagine how they'd feel about that decision making. So hopefully when it's reauthorized, get a lot more schools that will ask for a police officer. But we've been able to give it to every school that's asked for one so far.
Go ahead.
Okay, so for us, and I want to say thank you for that. My son's military police, one of them, and so I am a big fan and supporter always anyway of the police. So it's just wonderful. We use ours for the counselor, and so I just kind of want to put that also, that just the way it's set up, I feel like having that versatility and like the choice, like you're saying, for the local, I'm very appreciative of. And so the counselor for where we sit rurally, et cetera, is, of course, I would love both, but funding wise and all that, I get it. There are parameters there, and we only get so much, but very appreciative. I just want to kind of just put that.
Yes, all the money that we had, to the extent it wasn't used, it was devoted to paying for counselors in schools and social workers in schools, which is very important. When kids are upset at home, they can't learn. They need someone to talk to at school. Kat, could you check what Madeline was talking about? I have no idea. Okay. And if so, why wasn't it?
Okay. And we know that that this generation of students definitely we see challenges around mental health more prevalently. The suicide rates are up, and I think if people aren't familiar with Jonathan Haidt's work about the anxious generation, looking at how social media and selfies and cell phones have all contributed to really change the way that students develop socially, and that's creating some challenges for schools. And if we don't provide the support, if we just kind of the way things used to be done, it was the teacher's responsibility to manage all that. Well, a lot of it's getting outside of what teachers can really handle effectively, and it creates an environment where teachers don't feel the support.
Yeah, cell phones have been a big problem, and we're lobbying the legislature for a bill to ban cell phones in the classrooms. And at least ours at school, they're not going to get bullied. But even more important, I feel like it's really unfair to ask a teacher to teach a class where the kids are looking at their cell phones.
Well, and a lot of the research shows, even if they aren't looking at them, if they're in their pocket, then they're distracted by whether or not that phone is going to go off, whether or not there's something happening that they're missing. If they know that everybody is not on their phones, then it does lower that level of anxiety. So thanks but social workers and school counselors have a tremendous. I hope we wouldn't see a situation where we would reduce the number of social workers and school counselors in the interest of increasing guns in schools. Not guns in schools, but you know what I mean. The needs are both there. We definitely need to balance those.
Yeah, I've been attacked I get attacked by both sides, and
You get attacked by everyone.
the fact that I fund social workers and counselors, I get attacked from the extreme right side. I get attacked a lot from the left, obviously, but I think I tell them, I say, kids need somebody to talk to if they're upset about something that happened at home, especially. Otherwise, it's going to be tough for them to learn.
Thank you. I see Eric's got his hand up.
Good morning.
Morning.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I have a question about essential standards. I'm really curious about this, about why you're moving towards essential standards. How are you determining what standards are essential, and who are the people that are determining which standards are essential? Most importantly, what is the process that you're using to determine which standards are essential? And how will you communicate to teachers that even though a standard is deemed essential, that doesn't mean the other standards should not be taught? Because the standards, as we know from this process, you have essential to learn, important to understand, and nice to know. So again, my curiosity is why you're doing this, how you're doing this, and who's involved in this process.
The method of determining it was quite extensive. We had quite a large number of teachers come in, hold group meetings, and they're the essential standards were all determined by teachers. We played no role in it. It was purely a teacher effort. I agree that we need to teach the other standards as well, but the idea of essential standards is that those are the standards that you teach to mastery. You can't teach all the spectrum is too broad. You can't possibly teach all the standards to mastery. And the reason for it, I think I covered in the beginning, which is when students are tested, specifically tests that are end of the year tests that carry a lot of weight, they should be tested on concepts that they've been taught. I think it's barbarous to test them on concepts they have not been taught. I'm very upset at one of my predecessors for having eliminated them. I think that made it very hard. I've had superintendents tell me those tests aren't really a test of proficiency. Well, I've read the tests; they are a test of proficiency. But if you didn't happen to test to mastery those standards that ended up getting emphasized on the test, the students may do poorly on the test, even though they did perfectly well in school. So this is absolutely crucial thing to be doing. Everybody will have the essential standards by the end of February. We'll give them lots of time to prepare to emphasize those standards prior to the test in April of 2016.
So I guess my second question is what's driving it to establish essential standards that will mark and measure what it means to look like to be a learner at this grade level in a specific subject with certain content, or is it to make better assessments that will assess and measure student learning?
The point is the principle is that students should be tested on concepts they've been taught, and they should not be tested on concepts they've not been taught.
Completely agree with you with that. But again, what is going to be the driver? Is it going to be the standard? Because that assessment is just a one-day snapshot or a one-week snapshot of how the kids did, and anything could have happened that week. I mean, that could have been the day that their parents got divorced. That could have been the day that something happened in their life, or the kids are being so over-assessed. And in fact, many kids, what if I told you that in the older grade levels are actually throwing the assessments because they're realizing there's no teeth to the assessment. It bites the teacher. It doesn't bite the student. Okay, it doesn't basically not even have to bite the student, but more so impact the student.
Yeah,
So
that's an excellent point. Excellent point. When I was superintendent from 2003 to 2011, there'd been a bill passed by the legislature before I took office that said the students had to pass what was then the Ames test in order to graduate. They had 5 chances to do it, twice their sophomore year, twice their junior year, once their senior year. And the cut score was set so that I never heard of students who were unable to graduate as a result, but I've talked to a lot of people who said they failed the first time and they studied really hard so that they would pass and be able to graduate in subsequent testing. And that's exactly what we want. We want the students studying and learning something. We have schools with an 85% graduation rate and a 3% proficiency rate. So those diplomas are fraudulent. And CEOs of businesses are noticing. They're telling me students come in saying they're high school graduates, but they don't have the skills you expect of a high school graduate. So
You're absolutely correct. My other concern is we also have A schools with 40% proficiency in literacy and 40% proficiency in math. Is there a way the department can do things in terms of multiple measures where a school's letter grade is not just based upon a snapshot of what happens on one day or over the course of 1 week? That's a sports mentality. It doesn't matter how your team performs all season. What matters is whether you won the Super Bowl or the World Series. So what could Arizona do dynamically, which is happening in some other states, such as doing regional assessments done by regional centers, where basically you have the state standards, but the regions are the ones who are making the assessments. Kentucky's doing this, New Hampshire's doing this. What can we do to get a true, accurate measure of what the learner looks like at a given grade level in a specific subject with certain content?
we disagree on that. I don't agree with you at all. I think the fact that it's a one-day test is so if you don't count on that one-day test to measure how the students have done, you have no idea how the students have done. Teacher grades are subjective, and a lot of teachers have complained to me that they're under tremendous pressure from administrators to pass the kids on, whether they've learned anything or not. Some of the teachers complain to me bitterly about that. And if we don't have tests to find out what the kids learned, we're in an airplane with no pilot, flying toward a mountain in the darkness. So you think it's a one-day test and there's some kids who may have a bad day. I don't accept that. I believe we have to know how our students are doing, and there have to be consequences to the results.
Well, who gets the consequences?
Well, hold on a second, Eric. Hold on a second, because this is verging on becoming argumentative, and I'm not that keen on that.
Okay.
I feel like, clearly there are issues around accountability, and there's lots of different schools of thought on the best way to utilize assessment data in holding schools accountable. And we all have to be in the same school of thought in order to move forward on something. And I think that what you're saying is that yes, when it's aggregated to a certain level, it has more value, and that other factors need to feed into it. And I think that there's something to that. But I also understand what Superintendent Horne's saying, that really that is a valuable data point. And it does tell us something about what's happening at a school, especially when you've got consistent longitudinal data. And that's one of the things that I know Arizona has really tried to do over the last 8 years, is to make sure that we are being consistent about how we are looking at and how we're assessing the quality of schools, so that there's at least that ability to see improvement and recognize improvement or growing deficiencies based on that consistent approach. And I know that Arizona is actively engaged in trying to improve its accountability system, and that's there's a recognition that some of what we have in our system is a lot of noise that does clutter it up. And you brought up the point of schools that have very high letter grades and low proficiency rates, and a lot of that's because decisions were made at the state board level that growth was more important than proficiency. And then we've also seen some grade inflation around growth, and those two things have contributed to really diminish the overall effectiveness of the accountability system in Arizona. And that's something that the state board, and Superintendent Horne is one voice on that state board, but that's really, something that the state board is taking a leadership role and trying to address.
Sean, let me add something.
Sure.
The all of the superintendents nationwide get together once in a while. And the smartest one that I ever knew was from Pennsylvania. And here's what she taught me. There are three things that are necessary for top-notch education. The quality of the teachers and teacher leaders is number one. Number two, the quality of curriculum. And number three, the motivation of the students. And too often we forget about that all-important third factor. It is terribly unfair to judge teachers and schools on test results without any motivation for the students to do well. The year I left office, when they eliminated the requirement that students pass the test to graduate, I got reports from teachers that they asked the kids to do well, and they say, "Why should I?" The teacher was being measured, but the students weren't. And some would leave early, some would doodle on their answer sheets. It's very unfair. I'm very upset at the fact that they eliminated that provision that was working very well at the time. The other thing is, the reason we give essentially even consideration to growth as well as to proficiency is that a teacher in a poor district who gets kids who don't bring a lot from home and are 2 grade levels behind, and the teacher brings them two grade levels in 1 year, is a better teacher than a mediocre teacher in a rich school who has kids coming with more preparation from home and who get high proficiency rates. So you need to reward teachers that are getting results, and that's the reason that growth is considered an important factor, not more important factor than proficiency, but approximately equal.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. And I see that we're approaching the top of the hour, and Stephanie's got one more thing that she wants to say, and then I'll close this out.
Okay, it was just a clarifying question. So is that looking at state testing next year being only on the essential standards?
No, it'll be 60% of the test.
Okay, so it's just the majority of the test will be
Majority of the
essential
questions,
standards.
yeah. I'd
Okay,
like it
thank
to
you
be
for-
more, but I can't get it to be more without having the state board change the blueprint. So under the blueprint, you can only affect it so much. That may be an effort in the future to get the state board to change the blueprint, but right now we're operating under the existing blueprint, so we're only able to get 60%, but that's a lot better than 0, which is what you've had in the past.
Excellent. Thank you for that question, Stephanie. Thank you for that clarification, Superintendent Horne. So I'm going to throw this out there. That I think one of the things that we talk about a lot, and I so a couple of years back there was a big push around the science of reading, and really I think it was right about the time that you were running for office. It was kind of a big issue, right? The 3 queuing, and there were actually some bills in Arizona as well as around the country around the science of reading, and if you understand that as basically a misunderstanding about education in general, not just how kids learn to read, and it can be basically broken down to the presumption that maturation leads to academic development, and that was kind of as long as if you put a kid in a immersive environment with lots of things to read, they'll become a better reader. We've seen that with language, but language acquisition is different from everything from reading to mathematics, literacy, numeracy, all of the other. So anyway, I'm starting to ramble. Let me bring it back down.
Yeah, Sean, let me just say this quickly because we're almost up to an hour and I have other people waiting for me.
I'm sorry.
Let me just say this. We pushed very hard on science of reading. We have coaches that work for us that go to first grade classes and teaches first grade teachers what they need to know about the science of reading, and they've had great results, great improvement in results in those schools.
We have.
And we have lobbied to keep the requirement that there's a deadline by which time all the teachers first grade need to have had a course in the science of reading.
I would suggest that the problem we have with chronic absenteeism is the same problem. that parents feel like it doesn't matter if their kid goes to school. Just like teachers for years didn't think it mattered if they taught phonics. That there's this notion that maturation will lead to academic mastery.
It's
That
been
it's
shown to be
wrong.
nonsense. Yeah.
It is nonsense, but I think that part of why parents aren't worrying that much about whether or not their kids go to school is they figure that eventually they will understand what they need to understand. Anyway,
No, it's actually illegal to teach reading and not teach phonics, and has been for some time in Arizona. The legislature passed a bill to that effect.
and it's illegal not to send your kid to school unless you file an affidavit of homeschooling or, take another path. Well,
Sean, I'm gonna have to.
I know we're out of time. I
Mhm.
appreciate so much you taking the time to talk to us. I think it's been a wonderful discussion. I hope that, people will, the members got something out of it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Kat.
Thank you.
And to all of you, we'll see you guys down the road. I hope you
Thank
have
you for the
a-
opportunity, and if you need any help, please call Kat.
Will do.
I'm ready.
Awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.